Happy Monday, everyone, and welcome to the Things We Like podcast with Andrew and Brooks. I'm Andrew, and over here with me is Brooks.
Unfortunately, I am here, but Andrew's
Brooks,
here.
how are we doing?
I'm all right. Not bad. I got my whole not sponsored by Smartwater. You got your coffee in your like futuristic mug. I've been meaning to make throat coat for like a week, and I still haven't because I've just been focused on a million other things. But I'm okay.
Brooks still has his cough.
I know it'll last for another. My voice sounds cool though. I really have been enjoying how my voice sounds. It's like more of a radio voice. Yeah. It's like that SpongeBob episode where he goes. Yeah. It's so funny.
It's the Long Tan and Handsome episode specifically.
I think so. Yeah. But today we're talking about heavy music. The music that our parents hate. So
yeah, I think if to start out, let's define heavy music and then also talk about like our history. So like heavy music, what we're going to be talking about specifically with heavy music is like heavier metal, maybe even heavy rock. I would also kind of lean into that a little bit, and then like metalcore, and then we're gonna get into the genre specifics here, but like deathcore and death metal and things like that. So things with a lot of screaming. Sometimes they have some singing, and they are generally played with like down-tuned guitars.
That's a perfect way to put it. It's like down-tuning, screaming, or just a really high tempo. Like it's one of the three, usually two of the three. It doesn't, like you said, it doesn't have to necessarily be metal. It could be harder rock. It could be different. Also, Ryan just hit us with the whatever, dude.
Ryan love whatever, dude.
I love him. I love you regardless, Ryan, but you know, whatever, dude.
Ryan did some vocals for me the other day, and he did a great job on it. I just wanted to shout him out.
Shout out to Ryan. He's amazing. But anyways, so how do you want to hop into this one? I texted Andrew like 2 days ago because I've been actually listening to a lot more heavy music because I've been adding it to the our like overall things we like playlist, and I've been listening to that and like adding stuff that I used to grow up with, and I was like, man, I need to add some of the more metal and metalcore influences that I had to this playlist. And we both, well, I mean, we both grew up in it. Yeah, you need to start
general.
Yeah,
because I have a longer history with
Andrew
this.
Definitely has the longer history of this. I have a small bit, but like I got into it later. So Andrew, you start off.
You couldn't tell by my black shirt, swoopy hair, and love of all things anime. So my thing was I really got into heavier music probably in like middle school ish for me, and that was like first bigger heavy records I started getting into were like As Cities Burn. They were one of my favorite records of all time. We talked about that in the favorite records, or favorite albums, or favorite bands episode that we did. But they were one of my first heavy records with like screaming and stuff on it. And then there was a couple other bands like Demon Hunter, who was essentially like Slipknot, kind of. They were like Christian Slipknot.
I have heard of Demon Hunter. They're pretty good, actually.
They're actually really cool. Yeah, they started doing the whole the Slipknot like thrash thing, and then kind of built their own sound. It was really cool. I enjoyed it. But then you kind of like graduate into other stuff. And so when I was like starting bands and stuff in high school, like I started learning guitar and bass and like kind of learning what songwriting was like. So I started wanting to join bands and things. The first band, we're going to talk about all the bands that Andrew were in today.
Yeah.
We're going to get into some nerd stuff. I was in one band. I don't remember what it was called. I remember the initials being TFP because we had a logo that with a big P on it or something. And
Big P, I love it.
Big P. And
that's what it should have been.
But it was like a that's what it should have been. Yeah. It was like a confused heavier rock, so I wasn't sure what we wanted to do then, and that didn't last very long. That's like that first band syndrome that lasts a week and then dies out. And then I'm in high school. This is like I'm gonna date myself, but this is like 2007 or 8 at this point. I'm in my like sophomore junior year in high school. And I'm starting to like be over with high school and thinking about stuff I want to do in the future. And I was like, I'm gonna join a band. So I started trying to join a band, and I joined a band with my friend Jordan and his friend Cam, and I remember the band's name. It was called My Red Heaven.
Nice.
Yeah, and
gotta have basically those 3 words,
Yeah, and it basically sounded like Killswitch Engage, which was honestly kind of rad.
I kind of like My Red Heaven. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it was really stupid, honestly. But we played with a bunch of other bands that were local, and this was like the local scene in South Carolina was actually doing pretty well, and they were very into the. A lot of bands are very into the like early Devil Wears Prada stuff at this point, and like Seosin type stuff. So we were getting a lot of that, and we were kind of the like rock metal band of the scene at that point, which was pretty cool. Yeah, and it's got to have the heaven in it because it's a Christian band.
Thank God.
Thank God. So then I finished high school, kind of done with all that stuff, and wasn't in a band again until after college. So I did college for a couple years and then dropped out because I was like, I don't want to teach and I want to just do music stuff. So I started touring a lot and started doing that stuff. And I joined a small band with some mutuals at a time because, I was dating my now wife at the time, but, it was like super early on in our relationship. And I was like, I want to do something for fun. Coming back around the loving heavy music again at this point in my life. And so I was like, I want to join a band. So I joined a band called Acera, who I'm still friends with a lot of those guys at now. We're super good friends. I'm going to our vocalist's birthday party next week. Which is pretty cool. Acera spelled Acera, which the reason they called it that is because it's Spanish for sidewalk. And they were thinking of what is the most random word, and then let's look it up cool. Look it up in other languages, and that's going to be the band.
That's
name.
cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's Spanish for sidewalk, so it has no like bearing at all. But yeah, and then we were like a Fit for a King kind of metalcore with singing thing, and so we had a screamer, couple guitarists, went through some member changes. I always sang. Because I was the only one that could sing. And then, we did that for a while. So I played like the heavy rock stuff and then the metalcore stuff. And then after that, I joined the band I'm currently in, which is Harm.
Love Harm.
Yeah, Harm is awesome. So Harm is like a post-hardcore band. The story there is I was getting into doing a lot of post-production work. I had started kind of doing studio work part-time at this point. And I was looking for some bands. I was like, I really want to work with like an Under Oath kind of band. So I started looking up like Under Oath-y kind of post-hardcore bands. And then I found this band called Harm. And me and Andrew Clower had known each other for a really long time from like a worship side of things whenever his old church. And we had mutuals and stuff. And we had hung out some while I was in college doing the traveling musician thing.
Yeah.
And so he and I connected there, and so I saw he was on Facebook, and I'd known about his band, and he posted, "Hey, I'm looking for somebody to do some like synth work on this EP that we're working on." And I was like, "Hey, I'll do it." They paid me for it, and then I really liked working on it, and they were like, "Hey, do you just want to like join?" And I was like, sure.
Hey, we'll just put you in here. You know.
But they've been really chill with like they all live in North Carolina, in like Greensboro and Charlotte and Raleigh Durham area, so kind of spread across North Carolina.
Yeah.
But I live in South Carolina. I live like 3 hours away from them.
Yep.
So they've been cool with me. Just like I was more involved in the beginning. Then I kind of got married and had a kid, and so that kind of stopped me being,
you know, to get past all involved. The logistics, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of shoots my driving time. So I am not involved more recently in the show aspect of it all. But yeah, I mean it's been fun. I'm still helping them produce stuff, and
I've seen you guys live multiple times. I love Andy and Billy and everybody associated with that band. They're amazing.
Yep. Ian was in the band for a stint of time for a couple years.
Yeah, I haven't seen Winston or Ernest in a long time either. So
yeah,
those are great dudes.
They're good,
great people. Love them.
So that's kind of been I've kind of done the hard rock thing. I've done like the metalcore, deathcore thing. And then, like more recently, I've done like the post-hardcore, like more singing than screaming, kind of blended stuff. And then that's been my history with it. And like I've kind of listened to all of it and grown and enjoyed music. And I've produced a lot of that stuff as well.
That's true.
A lot of heavy bands, and I produce a lot of like metalcore stuff. A band called Discoveries that's really heavy from North Carolina that I've produced. Obviously I produce a lot of Harm stuff. I produced for this band called Long Suffering. They're a newer band, and they've been really cool. And that all that stuff has been really fun to just like. It's gotten me other work, which has been super fun.
Yeah.
But it's also gotten me like into other different types of music because I've had like learn it to mix it and
of course. And it like it builds your producing chops too, to have to, because you do a lot of hip-hop stuff too, and then you go from hip-hop to to like heavier stuff. Is like apples and grapes,
hard left turn there. So what about you, Brooksy?
So for me, I was a late bloomer to the music scene. I didn't meet you and like Ian and all the guys until like at least 2020. Because Big Gig 2020 was when, well, if you guys are unfamiliar, Big Gig is a little thing that we have here in the Atlanta scene. It's Ian's baby, so it's like Ian's kind of event type deal.
I help with it too.
And Andrew's always been a part of like
Joe Warren.
Andrew's always been a part of like the band called Love lore, and he always will be. But so that's when I got into the music scene. But when it comes to heavy music in general, like I grew up super like sheltered Christian kid. Like the first time I had ever heard anything remotely heavy was I used to ride the bus to school, and there's this kid that sat next to me. He was like, he was a few years older than me, and he would always like sleep on the way to school. And there were times where he would give me his MP3 player just because he was just nice, or just to like, because he was like, just leave me alone, And then that was the first time that I had really listened to bands like 3 Days Grace. Like I remember 3 Days Grace being one of the bands that was like, it was like stuff like Animal I've Become and stuff like that, like Home. It was a lot of stuff from the first record. And then because I grew up listening to like Christian radio, and like the first time I'd ever heard like rock music was like a classic rock station, and we grew up on that. But the first time I heard anything that was like even remotely heavy was like then, and I was like, oh, because there was like that, and then I heard Green Day for the first time. And then I heard, and Green Day is not technically heavy, but it's, guitar, like the American
sheltered Christian kids.
Yeah, we're like, what? Like, heard. It was American Idiot too, so it was like, it was that era of Green Day that I heard. And then fast forward to like later on in my life, my best friend Dylan, like we grew up listening to like It was Linkin Park is kind of like the next evolution because the first two records, Hybrid Theory was a big one for us, and and that's heavier, because
it's pretty heavy actually. Yeah,
because Chester screams and all that stuff, and it was a lot different than what I was used to. But I think the transition for me into heavy music was Rise Against, because Rise Against was like
it's like punk and heavy, almost metalcore.
It's got a lot of those punk, like the that, and then like the screaming, and like Tim McIlrath's vocals are really heavy, and then I transitioned from that to A Day to Remember, and once A Day to Remember hit, it was like game over. I'm like, I love this. And we had a friend who I still love him so much to this day. His name's Grayson. He was in a band called it was High Thread Count at first, and then Under the Weather. So he was in a hardcore band, and I went to see him at, I don't know if you've ever been to Swayze's in the Atlanta area.
Yeah, I know where it is.
So Swayze, that's like one of the first venues that I ever went to watch them play. And they actually, Funeral Portrait, right? A local Atlanta band. They used to be Cosmoscope. And I saw them in a Methodist basement near where I grew up, and that was crazy because like Lee Jennings, the singer, I saw him later when he was in the Funeral Portrait, and I went up to him at a show, and I was like, hey, I remember you, and you were in Cosmoscope playing with like Under the Weather. And he was like, yo, no way. And it was great. It was a great little moment for us. So then
lovely.
Yeah, Lee's great. And then it pretty much evolved after that, and like through Dylan and like through our friends, we listened to more heavier stuff. That's when I got into, and we'll get into the recommendations later, but that's sort of my back. I never was in a hardcore band. I wasn't ready to be in bands, like I learned how to play from when I was like 11, but I didn't really start doing music professionally till I was at least 20. So like I had to take time to learn. So
yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, I want to. Yeah, there's been a bunch of really cool bands, and it's, I don't know. There's been eras. You kind of started with like it all used to sound really bad. I like when you go back to like like where I started is like early 2000s, mid 2000s,
like the butt rock era stuff. Almost.
Well, it's like that, but then I like the metalcore back then sounded really bad. Mm-hmm. Like the production just wasn't there, and home studios were like just becoming a thing.
That's true.
So a lot of the mixes were less than great, but they still were good enough. They were passable,
right?
Like early Devil Wears Prada stuff. Like if you listen to like the first album, Dear Love of Discord, it sounds pretty bad by comparison to what we have now.
Yeah, I remember to add to that point, I remember listening to like early As I Lay Dying. So they have like their first record, and then their next record, the production value is like night and day, because it's like really kind of trashy sounding, and then it goes to the next one, you're like, whoa, okay, well now I can hear what they actually are supposed to sound like.
The jump from the first record to Shadows of Security, which is the second record, was crazy. As I Lay Dying was another band actually for me that got me into like heavier music.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I mean you even have the jump from the first couple of like EPs and albums from Under Oath to like when they got signed and they started having production budgets behind them. They started getting better and better and better. And anyway, then you had that, then you had the techno era of like crabcore stuff, and like people getting into like synths for the first time, and
that's like your Attack Attacks, like
Attack Attacks.
That's what I grew up
Devil Wears
with.
Prada actually used a lot of work, but they used it more tastefully than a lot of other people. But then you like the Attack Attacks and like the Asking Alexandrias and like the Abandon All Ships of the world, and even like the Woe Is Me was kind of like a good example of that a little bit, not quite much, but a little bit more. And then then you kind of move into like the post 2015 era, I would say, is like when it started becoming more legitimate.
Oh yeah, that's when it was really good. That's why I remember it being really good.
You started getting bands like getting nominated for Grammys, and you started getting bands like getting like more recognition, and these bands becoming like staples in people's lives, and having like, Warped Tour being at its height and all that kind of stuff happening time, which is pretty.
I love that. Yeah.
And I don't know, a lot of that stuff is really sick. But the thing I think that, and it sucks that this is the case, but the thing that did the most for heavy music was streaming.
Yeah. I feel like it, not to cut you off, sorry, but yeah, I feel like heavier music has always been more niche. So when you put it into the streaming, like, I'm going to use a big Ian word, the streaming zeitgeist, like that really elevated it to give it the audience that it always had, but now it's like, here's access to it.
Well, and what's really cool, it's like you had people that may have heard of like one band and had never listened to some of the other bands, or had maybe even never heard of a lot of the other bands. But then you immediately, if you go like on a Spotify or an Apple Music, you could go to that band's record, listen to that record, look immediately under it, related artists, and then you start, finding new bands. Or you go to a playlist and you find a band that you like, and you're like, okay, bands that sound like this, and then you go down that rabbit hole. But then there's also, if we're looking from like a more normie perspective, quote unquote, the people who have only listened to like radio pop music, have maybe heard of, seen bands like All Time Low that were on the radio in 2005, or Boys Like Girls that were on the radio in 2005. And like Paramore, a lot of people know those bands, and never really went down the rabbit hole of like either heavier rock music or like a metalcore music. Now have accessibility to go, oh, I like this band. There's this other band. Oh, that's pretty cool. Like, let's check out this heavier stuff that I've never listened to before. And then I don't feel the pressure of like buying a record and then hating it.
Yeah.
Like they can listen to a song and be like, oh, this is pretty cool. Listen to another song and be like, oh, this is pretty cool. Maybe go to a different band, listen to that song. Like, it made it more accessible for people, which kind of sucks because it also streaming also kind of ruined the payout of the music industry as a whole.
Yeah, that's a whole nother stream for a whole nother day. But yeah, I agree.
But as a whole, it kind of destroyed a lot of what the payment structure of what the music industry was built on. But it did lower the threshold barrier of entry, even for bands like a band called Love or Harm, to like to grow, get found, so I mean, there's like gives and takes, because before you had to be signed, you had to have this, like, you had to be road warriors, you had to be on tour constantly. Now you can just have really great streaming numbers and live off of that. There's lo-fi producers that do that. There's a lot of rock internet only bands that do that.
I know that this is kind of like a side tangent, but like I think of like the days of Nirvana compared to like now, because Nirvana, they had like in that Seattle scene, they had like, they were very limited to that part of the world, so they had to drive like several hours just to go to shows and maybe play to 5 people and put up a flyer and hope somebody heard them. Now we live in the internet age to where, like you said, internet bands, like that is so smart, because like you build your audience and you build your fan base, and then you start playing shows, then people start showing.
And it costs you $0.
It does. It's amazing. If you use,
you can learn to self-produce.
Yes.
You can learn to mix online. There's samples of software and plugins and all of that's for free that are super high quality now. And then distribution, there are free distribution options actually now. You can pay for them too. I suggest ones like DistroKid that you pay for, because they don't take percentages of your songs. But if you needed to start, you could.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, Spotify's free access. Making content is free. You have a phone. Most people have a smartphone with a camera well enough to make content. Build content around it. There you go. So like you could start from absolutely nothing. And have a musical career in a year.
Yeah, and it's wild because like you're definitely right with the the whole streaming thing. It has its pros and cons. Like the payout might not be great, but you know, the way that I've come to know it is like your main money comes from the shows, like when you play and like when you go out and people buy the tickets and people show up and people support you and people buy your merch and people do that. And then the music is like, yeah, you might get some revenue from Spotify or you might get some revenue from like a YouTube channel or something like that. But it's nowhere near the level of like the live aspect. So when you build that audience and you build that and then you start going out and doing stuff, I think that is the smartest way to do it.
It's less so now when you get into this is kind of getting into a totally different conversation, but I want to touch on it because I think it's important. If you look at people like Nick D or Connor Price who are in the pop space who have I think 9 million monthly listeners and have never played a show.
That's awesome.
They don't care. They just build content and they make music and they put it out consistently.
It's
and
smart.
They bankroll.
But smart.
Anyway, then you get into this conversation of bands that have been around since like the 2005s that have changed over time. So in chat, somebody mentioned Escape the Fate, and somebody mentioned Escape the Fate, and Escape the Fate is a crazy example of like what they sound like now versus how they started. And they also started with a different vocalist. And Of Mice and Men is a really good example of like a vocalist starting in one band, started the original vocalist of Attack Attack, left Attack Attack, started of Mice and Men. And now
I didn't know that band, actually. That's crazy.
Original vocalist went to start of Mice and Men with Shaylee, and then Shaylee left and started Dayshell, and then he was in that band for Austin was in Of Mice and Men for a little bit, and then he left, and then now they have Aaron Pauley from a different band. What I'm trying to say is it's a very incestuous as far as band members go.
Yeah, that's the way I've always seen it, because like bands, I remember they're not really like in the hardcore space, but a band like Emarosa. Like I've seen Emarosa live, and it's like mainly the singer, right? But then like the band changed a bunch.
Even originally, like the original vocalist is the vocalist from homeboy from I believe it's like Moss to Flames.
Really?
Their vocalist was the original vocalist of Emarosa in the EP.
I remember seeing Emarosa.
Then they had Johnny Craig,
who
was there for 2 records, and then he left and has come back and left, and then now they have a different vocalist. Who's also canceled for a bunch of different other reasons.
Yikes.
So you get into some crazy weird.
Yeah, it's stuff. Like a giant web of who's been in what band and like. That is kind of the thing I noticed with like metalcore bands and like not just metalcore, but like the generally heavy scene, like especially with it from like 2000 on, because it's like
this is something. This is a conversation I had with a couple people. So this is actually really funny. What a story. I was in Germany. With Death Therapy, I was filling in on keys. We were at a festival, and it was us and Death Therapy with Wolves at the Gate and Oster. And we were in a pub at 2 a.m. in Germany because our sleep schedules were all messed up from flying 8 hours from America to Germany. And so we were just having a chat, and there was a conversation about, at least at this time, and this was 2019. So there's some grain of salt to this. But there's not a band in that's been out in the last, at least at this time, at 2019, there wasn't a band in the last 10 years that had grown to be a staple. The closest at that point had been Fit for a King. But like Knock Loose hadn't broke out yet, and even then they're not doing crazy numbers. Like they're big, but they're not. Arenas big. There's not really any bands in the metalcore scene that don't, and I will caveat this, that say aren't originally from like the mid 2000s or earlier scene, maybe even 2010s and earlier scene. So we'll say 10-year time period from 2010 to 2020 or 2020. There's not a band that either isn't originally from that era or doesn't have a member from a different band from that era. So like Beartooth would be a really great example of a band that's really, really big, but Caleb was originally in Attack Attack.
That's true. Yeah.
So that puts him in that. If you get, so it's like that is kind of there's not like a big band from falling in reverse. Ronnie Radke was originally in Escape the Fate.
Right.
So like that's from that era. You kind of get into that like web weavy.
Yeah, so like, it's not like a Metallica type deal where it's like they were established and they had like, I mean, they've switched members, but they like Metallica is a staple of metal. So
yes, exactly. But there's not like staples of metalcore like this underlying genre that have nowadays. I would say that is different.
Yeah.
At the time when we were having this conversation, it hadn't happened in a really long time. Now I feel like Knocked Loose has maybe moved into that world, and even bands like Spiritbox have moved into that world.
Yeah.
Spiritbox actually falls into the category of having members for previous bands because both Mike and Courtney were from I Wrestled a Bear Once.
That's a cool name.
So they were a pretty big kind of like thrashy band. Kind of getting into some semantics here, but if you look into those kind of bands, there's not like a bunch of massive bands that were from like that don't have a connection to the what I would call the quote unquote heyday of this kind of music. Which is sad because there's a lot of good younger bands that I think should be bigger and should have more notoriety. But what can you do? People like consistency.
Yeah, I understand.
So I would love to hear from you, Brooks. What were your entry level, like what were your entry point bands into these? We kind of talked about it a little bit, but like what were your entry point bands and what are some bands that you think if people are like, I am interested in like heavy music
right
in general, what are some good places to like get started?
So before we hop into that, I'm going to scroll through chat real quick.
Yeah, let's read through chat.
And then I have really good answers to that, I believe. So Russell, that's Carp, basically. So Russell, I've known him for a long time. I got the podcast open at work. Thank God. Ryan says, love you guys. I'm ready to talk about heavy music. Yeah, Ryan has a lot of... Ryan Love. One of the sweetest men in the world. He's the singer of a band called Love. And...
beautiful person.
He also grew up in that scene, in that realm, you know. So he has a lot to say, and he's got a lot of experience with it. Y'all, you got all the guys in a band called Love have way more experience, like Blake and maybe Austin and I maybe are the only two that grew up a little different. But like I know Blake and Ian, especially Ian and you and Ryan and like like all you guys grew up in that world. It's got to have that kind of Christian roots for the name. Yeah, I know. It's like the Christian roots for the name, and also like I said earlier, like the 3-word structure, the this is like a very popular
or single words.
Yeah, exactly. And then like Ryan says, active depression sounded amazing.
It doesn't, Ryan.
And then Russell says, Lamb of God, Converge, Killswitch Engage. I love Metalocalypse, which was a show. I think it was an Adult Swim show.
Metalocalypse was actually a really good entry point to a lot of people into metal and like metalcore and hard rock and stuff because they guested people all the time. And there was a show based around like a metal.
Yeah.
Some of that music is really great music.
Yeah.
Like, it's just really cool.
I've seen clips of it, and it's pretty iconic from what I've seen. And he also says, early Escape the Fate to current is a crazy difference. It's kind of like, what's that one? Bring Me the Horizon, I guess, would be a good example of that, too.
Bring Me the Horizon is actually a lot more drastic of a difference.
Yeah, because they've just changed. Like, I don't listen to them a lot.
They started as a deathcore, and now they make pop music.
Yeah, which is, I mean, they're a great band. So
and it's the same band.
Yeah, it's wild. And then you said Connor Price came out of nowhere. You're probably familiar with that name.
So Connor Price had a really interesting rise. Connor was like doing the TikTok thing and popped off on TikTok making like hip hop music. He had a couple viral things go where he was doing like open verse challenges where he would like, rap. He wanted to be a rapper.
Yeah.
Some stuff. And he was previously an actor, full-time actor.
Wow.
So he's in episodes of like Law and Order. He's in episodes of I'm trying to think. He got shot in an episode of something. He's in a lot of like those kind of episodes of shit TV shows. And
yeah,
I think he was in Supernatural. He was in an episode of Supernatural too.
Wow.
Yeah, he was like a guest at an episode of Supernatural. It was cool. He did that whole thing and then wanted to make the transition to doing music, and then took some advice from Nick D, the other guy, and was like, hey, stop working on other people's music and do your own thing. And so he doubled down on doing his own thing, and that's when he started really popping off.
That's great.
And he basically went from like 50,000 followers on TikTok to like friggin' an insane amount. Like, I don't even want. I want to check and make sure that I know exactly what his follower count, because his current follower count is 5.5 million.
Wow.
But he went from 50 to a million like super fast, and then has just been growing since.
Yeah, that's kind of that thing that you said that like now it's so much more accessible than I feel like it used to be, and like now somebody like Connor Price could have 5.5 million followers on TikTok and exist in that world.
Hip hop artists and have over 9 million monthly listeners and own it all himself, which is crazy.
Yeah, and then Russell says Ronnie from Escape the Fate versus Ronnie from Falling in Reverse again was
different person. It's basically a different person.
Yeah, it's that is an insane transition. I've heard some of the newer like what is it? Falling in Reverse.
I hate that I love some of the Falling in Reverse stuff.
Well, some of the songs are cool,
It's really good.
But I don't like. I got a knock up on my door the other day. Like, I don't like that at all. Yeah. That's terrible. I just don't like it. But people do, and that's fine. But I just I've never been into that. He said I love Beartooth here lately. I like what is it? Sick and Disgusting is that one album that they have, or
the EP.
Yeah, I love that. That's the one that I remember. That's with like the In Between or whatever. Like that song's amazing.
Yeah.
Current favorite song right now is Might Love Myself.
My Love Myself is a killer song, dude. It's like a very cool pop rock heavy mixture. It's got this like sheeny, like, I don't even know how to explain it really, but it's, if you liked Issues, it's kind of got that vibe.
Yeah, that's nice.
Or like homeboy that sang for Issues on their farewell run, Home Team. It's kind of got that vibe.
Interesting.
Yeah, I actually do really like that stuff. I think it's really good.
Awesome.
I think him being shirtless constantly is a little much, but
hey, he's just doing the Post Malone thing, which Post Malone can do no wrong in my eyes.
Post Malone.
Anyways,
talk about somebody that came from the scene.
Yeah, he did, and then he blew up in his own way because
doing hip hop stuff. But he was originally trying out to be the other vocalist for Crown the Empire.
That's true. And then he became Post Malone, and the rest is history. So love.
So funny.
Richard Austin Post. Love that man. I love Post Malone. But
I love Post Malone.
Anyway, so like you asked me before, what are some good entry bands? I have my core four. And
this is for somebody that's transitioning from like, I've never listened to heavy music before. I mainly listen to like radio or pop music.
Right. I have some bands and then some albums. My first, I would say August Burns Red. August Burns Red is a very I don't want to say this in a negative way because it's not negative. I think their music is incredible. It's a family-friendly metalcore band. Yeah. Because they're all good dudes. They're all wholesome. A lot of them are dads. A lot of them are just regular dudes, but they make some incredible music. My favorite album, if you're gonna start with August Burns Red, you can't go wrong with Constellations. But also Found in Faraway Places is what I would put people on. because those songs are cool. Because I just listened to Identity the other day, and that's the one where it's like it's got amazing like digga digga ding ding da ding 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 digga ding ding da, amazing breakdown. But then it goes into like the surf rock bit, and it's like ding digga ding 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 ding, and it's awesome. I love it. Like, and they have a lot of
musician, specifically like a guitarist.
Yeah,
you will love August Burns Red is a really good shout for the guitarists. And
like JB and even Dustin, like Dustin, that band, he's just a multi-instrumentalist. He does a lot of the writing stuff. They're amazing musicians. And I'm going to look up because I can't remember August Burns.
The other guitarist?
Yeah. Brent. Yeah. I don't want to leave Brent out because he's an awesome like rhythm guitarist and he really holds the band together. So shout out to Brent. My second recommendation would be the Ghost Inside.
Another family friendly.
Yeah, because you're friends with Chris, right?
Yeah, they're guitarists.
Yeah, so I remember specifically buying, like when we used to buy albums, right? I went to Best Buy and I bought Get What You Give, and I still have the hard copy of the album, and I used to listen to that a lot when I was in high school. So high school around like 2012 to 2015 is when I really kind of grew into and was getting into like heavier stuff.
Yeah.
But Get What You Give is such a seminal album
so it's
for
funny.
me.
Chris was in another band that I liked a lot, which was Texas in July.
I've heard of that band.
Which were like another. They were kind of like August Burns Red ish.
Mm-hmm.
Their vocal. So it's funny. Chris ended up going to be in the Ghost Inside, obviously, and then their other vocalist JT ended up being the vocalist of Era. So he's the singer of
Era is on a whole nother level, man.
Era, if you like prog, I
saw them open for August Burns Red at the Tabernacle. Is one of the best shows I've ever seen. Like Era is incredible.
Yeah. But yeah, TGI is awesome, man. If you like positive-ish lyrics and like I think they do a really good job of blending like the lots of screaming and lots of singing thing. Really great choruses. They're much more like hardcore leaning than metalcore blended.
Yeah, because their drummer he's probably one of my favorites because, you know, I'm not going to get into it, but they got into the accident and, you know, he lost a leg. But dude, the way he still drums with the prosthetic is like,
it's crazy.
He's incredible.
Him and his dad built the hammer. That's what they call it.
Yeah.
Hammer.
It's awesome. It is so inspiring.
Piece to go on.
It's so inspiring, dude. Like that band is just on a whole nother level for me personally. And then, this is relating to Dylan and I. Our experiences with like Memphis Mayfire was a huge influence. I literally think the run of The Hollow and Challenger are some of the most perfect or close to perfect
from that era.
Works.
Especially from that era.
Yeah, dude, The Hollow. I personally like The Hollow more than Challenger, but Challenger's got like more iconic songs, I think. Like there's Alive in the Lights. There is I think Jezebel's on that one as well. But then you've got like songs like from The Hollow, you got The Sinner, you've got The Victim, you've got, you know, it's all the names. It's like The Redeemed is one of my favorites. It's like a deep cut from that album. Those albums are incredible. I saw Memphis Mayfire live when they toured with Yellow Card. And I've seen him multiple times, but like I actually saw him in a venue with it was The Word Alive when Luke Holland was in the band.
Oh, nice. Was playing their drum.
That was the Life Cycles era. I wouldn't say that. I mean, The Word Alive is a good band to get into, but
shout out Telly.
Yeah, Life Cycles was like the album to get into. Like that album is a good jumping off point if you're talking about maybe not specific bands but specific albums. That and the Color Morale's No Hope. I think that might it's close to one of my favorite like heavy hardcore records, because No Hope, I remember listening to that in high school and it just blew me away because his name's Chris Garrett. Or is Garrett Rapp. Garrett Rapp. Sorry, I got my wires. Chris's and my whatever. Garrett Rapp. He goes from like screaming like, oh, and then he goes, oh, and it like changes to this like really throaty, like the transition.
Yeah.
He's
got an incredible voice.
Yeah, Garrett Rapp is amazing. And then my last pick would be The Devil Wears Prada. Just with Roots Above and Branches Below is like one of the best albums to get into. That one, I remember that album specifically was huge for me because like I think I borrowed it from Grayson. Actually, I borrowed that and Life Cycles from Grayson, and then I gave it back to him. Then I eventually just I fell in love with those albums, dude. Like, and they have a song called "Assistant to the Regional Manager," which is an Office reference, and I'm like,
this record is so good.
It's so great. Like, and it's in drop. It's in like, it's not. Is it drop D? Or is it like...
Yeah. That one's all... That whole record, I think, is in drop D.
Which is impressive because, like, I can't write in drop D to save my life.
It sounds really heavy for drop D.
I know, right? Like the...
It might be C, but I thought most of it was D.
I think it was, yeah. Those are my picks. Like, that's the... those are great entry points.
Those are good shouts. Before I do mine, I want to tell shout out Chloe. Happy Monday.
Oh, Chloe's here. Oh yeah.
Well, happy Monday, Chloe. good to have our people in chat today.
Love Chloe.
Good to have our people in chat.
Absolutely.
So I have a handful, and this is going to be for those people. Novice also said this in chat. I don't really like screaming in music, but I can tolerate it if I like the rest of the song.
Yeah.
I'm going to give recommendations that aren't necessarily my favorite, but are probably easier for people that aren't sure about screaming in music, but want to listen to heavier music. Right. So I'm going to suggest number one, Issues. I think Issues is an incredible place to start if you like any kind of pop music and you like really great singing and cool guitar riffs and breakdowns and stuff. Like especially their last full-length record that they put out, Beautiful Oblivion, has like very little screaming on it by comparison to the rest of their albums.
Yeah.
If you like that record, you will like the rest of their albums. Just go check that one out. I think Issues is a sad loss for the scene because they did some incredible stuff and pushed music forward in some really cool ways in the scene. A lot of people are stealing from them now, actually, taking and stealing is in like being inspired by them.
That's kind of how all music is,
a lot of the most recent Beartooth stuff has been inspired by stuff that Issues has been doing since like 2010.
Yeah, so, that's just the way music is. It's like one band will happen, and then like the 1975 will happen, and then after that you'll have a bunch of 1975
still happening.
Yeah,
still happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, Issues, an incredible. I would suggest Beautiful Oblivion. It's got a blue with person walking through a door. It's really great. Would highly suggest it. They also have an instrumental version of that album. It's just a really
so does August Burns Red. They have a lot of these metal groups, if they're doing it right, or like hardcore groups. Like August Burns Red has again found in Faraway Places. They have a completely instrumental version. My mom actually, fun fact, not to derail your picks, but my mom, our parents are like Southern, traditional Southern ladies and dudes. So like my mom and dad don't really like, she's like, I love the music. I love the way it sounds. I just don't like all that screaming. And that's fair. If you don't like it, you don't like it. And you shouldn't have to be forced to like it. But a lot of these metal bands, like August Burns Red does this thing where they release instrumentals without the vocals at all, which is you can appreciate the music and the songwriting and the craftsmanship, but you don't have to hear like the "my blood is thicker than water." I can't scream because I can't scream, period. But like I can't do it because my voice is bad. But recovering.
There's also like sync purposes to do that. It's a lot easier to get placed on.
Of course, yeah. Like that's just smart. It's very smart
as well. Anyway, so yes, Issues, probably my number one recommendation from somebody coming into like that world. The other, a couple others I would suggest, if you've been on TikTok in the last, music TikTok specifically in the last like 2 years. You've probably heard about Sleep Token. Sleep Token, I would highly
have heard of them, yeah.
Sleep Token, I would highly suggest getting into. Their most recent record is really, really great. Big fan. Been a big fan of theirs since like 2019 or 2018 or something like that. I found them they did a Hey Ya cover.
Oh, wow.
I want you to look it up actually, because I think we could play a little snip of it.
So, Sleep Token. Hey Ya. All right. Play a little bit. Oh, this is.
I love Sleep Token, dude. Just like skip to like the middle.
Okay, just like let's replay right here.
Yeah.
Oh, we get together, but separate, so it's better when there's feelings.
Now skip to the end. Yeah, dude's voice is angelic.
That's amazing. That's so crazy.
But they also make like heavier music as well. So a lot of their stuff is if you want to do, I don't know. Well, I'll have to suggest one later, but there's a bunch of really great stuff from their last record. The Summoning is really, really great. They make some really cool pop infused heavy music with a lot of really great singing. There is some screaming, but not nearly as much as some other bands you're going to find. I think Sleep Token is an incredible entry point into, and one of the greatest drummers also. Like,
right.
If you like groove, dude is a monster.
That's great.
His name's Two. Two is incredible.
That's awesome. He's just a number.
Yeah.
That's sick. Or is it like TU?
It's lowercase II.
Oh, that's amazing. That's so sick.
They do the whole like mask thing, and they don't show their thing,
like a Slipknot-ish type beat.
Yeah,
or like
kinda.
Ghost is another good band.
Except people know who Slipknot is. It's more like Ghost.
Oh, okay. So it's more thematic. It's more theatrical.
Yeah.
Like
it's super theatrical, but they play like poppy heavy music. It's super cool. But yeah, Sleep Token, fantastic band if you're trying to get into that world. Another really great instance of who would I be if I did not suggest Under Oath.
Oh, right. That's the band. That's the band that I missed growing up, which sucks because like everyone I know, all my really close friends are like, dude, Under Oath was the thing, and like Seosin too a little bit, but this Seosin's probably a little different. But Under Oath is the band that I missed. So
Under Oath is really cool because they have a singing drummer, Aaron Gillespie. He's one of like the staples of the scene. They infused the emo side of stuff with the more metalcore side of stuff. Really, really, really well, in my opinion. I don't know. There's a lot of really great records. I would suggest just listening to like a top songs playlist of theirs. It's really great. If you like whiny, sad music mixed with like heavier guitars, it's what Harm is. I would also suggest Harm in that category.
Harm is amazing.
Harm falls into that category where we write really depressing songs about why religion has hurt us and why we're sad old people, and
very relatable.
Yeah, exactly. But we have a female singer. Would highly suggest.
Billy's great
in that thing. Bad Omens is another really good shout.
I have heard a lot of good things about Bad Omens.
Bad Omens is a great shout. They've blown up really, really a lot in the last like couple of years. It was really funny. Me and Chris were talking about them actually because they self-produced their record that popped off, and it's really funny because right before they popped off, the Ghost Inside actually took them on a run with like, it was like a Day to Remember. Think about this is crazy right now actually. It's a Day to Remember, the Ghost Inside, Beartooth, and Bad Omens.
Oh, that would be an incredible show.
It was crazy. But they do have an incredible show. I got two more for you. Number one for probably if you're like, oh, I really like female singers, Spiritbox.
Spiritbox is also phenomenal.
Spiritbox is awesome. Mike is one of the best riff writers in recent years I've ever heard. Also, sweethearts. I met them in Virginia at a festival that I was at with Heirloom, and yeah, sweethearts. And Courtney, incredible vocalist all the way around, can pull off anything live. She freaking high kicks. Like, she has so much fun on stage. You don't even have to listen. Just look up Spiritbox Live. You can mute it if you want. But them on stage is just so fun.
That's what I like to do too. I like to be nuts on stage. Just like
yeah.
I'll mute it.
And if you can find if it's as long as it's got an aerial shot, I think that's a back only shot.
Oh, is it back only?
Yeah. Go back one.
Maybe this one?
That one, yeah. They just have so much fun on stage, man. She'll like dance and stuff, and
that's great.
Dude, it's so fun. They're so cool.
And they've been, this is a band that I haven't really listened to a lot of them, but I've heard a lot of really, hold on. Wrong thing. I've heard a lot of really great things about Spiritbox.
Play a little bit of that since it's live at West Vegas.
I know this isn't really do it justice, but like,
I mean, it's incredible that this is live though. I think it's her screaming in a second. She also does all the screaming for their band.
That's
so they only have the one vocalist.
Amazing.
Yeah, so she's incredible. Would highly suggest that. They put out a record called Eternal Blue. Would suggest that one if you're looking for a place to start. The last one I would suggest, and this is probably one of my favorite bands in the last like couple of years. I've been a fan since like record one. Dayseeker, man. Dayseeker's a freaking powerhouse.
That's one I've never heard. I'm gonna look them up. I've never heard of Dayseeker.
Dayseeker, listen to Without Me. Yeah, that's a great one. Dude's voice, bro, is just like skip to about 3/4 of the way through. Sorry, not 3/4.
Like the most replayed, maybe.
Yeah.
Wow.
Dude's voice is incredible.
Wow.
Like so good.
Sorry, I didn't show
guitars.
I'll play some of the I forgot to show this, sorry.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's dude's voice is incredible. Down-tuned guitars, like he screams a little bit. In the last two records, he's done more singing than screaming.
Mm-hmm.
So their last record, the last two records have Sleep Talk was the record before the last, and then if you want to listen to the most recent stuff, Dark Sun is the record that Without Me song, and it's a lot more like they do a really cool job of blending like heavy music, pop music, and synthwave, which is like a really cool take on it. Because he like sings like a pop singer with a little more grit. Sometimes a lot of falsetto stuff, but pop melodies. And they still have the heavy guitars and the heavy drums, but then they're like very synthwave influenced. So it's like a lot of this retro 80s inspired stuff, like synths going around, and they do a lot of cool takes on that
awesome
kind of genre.
Yeah, he sounds incredible. And I love that it's not just like I think the way it's evolved is like it's very more of a songwriter thing. It's not just like it's not just like heavy for the sake of being just like there's substance to it. There's meaning, and there's always been substance and meaning, but you know what I mean. It's more of from a songwriter's perspective, and not just being one way for the sake of being one way.
These songs are a lot that we're talking about are a lot more available to people that, like I said, it's a lot more attainable to people that are
I guess that's what I meant to say was it's becoming more accessible. Yeah. And you can
100%.
and shout out to A Day to Remember too. Like I said earlier, like A Day to
Remember is another really great example. I just don't listen to them enough to have like a good example of what that accessibility would be.
Right. So
maybe what separates me from you.
I grew up with A Day to Remember, and that's like the band that like transitioned me into the screaming aspect, because they're the ones, Downfall of Us All is obviously
they're an incredible. I agree, they're an incredible transition band. If you like heavier music, and you've listened to it with mostly singing, and you want to I want to try something with a little more screaming, A Day to Remember is a fantastic.
Technically, I think I could be wrong, but they consider themselves to be more pop punk.
Yes,
but like
with heavy parts.
Yeah, so that's like it's an easy transition, because I went from like 3 Days Grace, Rise Against, A Day to Remember, and then like everything else came after that. So that's sort of like 100%. my timeline of that. So A Day to Remember is a very great band.
I jumped in the deep end with As Cities Burn and Demon Hunter and Slipknot.
Okay, let's talk about some earlier bands. Let's read the chat, and then I'll talk about some like classic acts, I guess. So Ghost, what's up, dude? Chloe loves Sleep Token. Russell loves Bad Omens. So does Chloe. Hailstorm, I Prevail, Hollywood Undead.
Hailstorm is awesome.
I mispronounced that, but I've heard of that band, I think. And then Hollywood Undead, I've heard of them. Fit for a King. This August 7th is my next concert. Oh, so they're all playing together. Oh,
shout out Fit for a King. So I love those boys. So Daniel that's in Fit used to be in a band with Jason from Death Therapy called Becoming the Archetype. And then so I've played with them a bunch, and they are all sweethearts. Both Ryans are very, very, very awesome people. I met their old drummer in Pennsylvania before he left. Their new drummer is very, very cool. But yeah, I don't know. I love Fit for a King as people. Like, they make great music. They're one of my favorite like heavier screaming bands, like heavy screaming. But as people, they are gems.
Novice says 3 Days Grace is about as far as I've gone. That's a good band, though.
It's a great band, and I feel like 3 Days Grace is a very good transition into honestly a lot of the bands that I was talking about that are like more sing friendly.
And like Russell says, check out Fabville. Maybe I'm reading that wrong, but some good transitioning. Also, Novice has Disturbed. I think I'll get into Disturbed because
I loved Disturbed in high school, man.
Yeah, so that's a band I want to mention here. So Fabville is a real thing. Divide.
Nice.
I've never heard of that.
That's cool.
So I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Also, Dr. Deathwish says, I remember the Leonard Skinner days. Yeah, dude. That's actually what I grew up on. Like my dad and my whole dad's side of the family were like musicians, and like I grew up on that and like classic rock, and then I transitioned to harder rock. So it's all just like it all happens in a line, like you go from like, what you hear. I went from like Aaron Carter and like the Backstreet Boys growing up, and then I heard classic rock like Leonard Skinner and like all these other bands, and then it just evolves from that. But
yeah,
I want to talk about, and this will be the last thing we sorry, this will be the last thing we talk about. Maybe like, I know you have to go in like 10 minutes, so I'll be really quick about these. So some of the classic acts that I want to talk about is, as far as heavy music goes, I'll just name them off really quick. Slipknot is great. Slipknot is like, that's a heavy, it's more like, it came out of like the rap rock era, but they combine so many different, of thrash and like rap rock. And
Iowa.
Iowa is one of the darkest albums, heaviest albums I've ever heard. It's one of the best. I love Iowa.
Incredible.
Bands like Meshuggah is fucked up. Like, there's no better way to put it. Meshuggah is fucked up.
Most people have probably seen the Obscene cover of the dude with the
they've heard Bleed, but like if you like prog metal, like that, they're like the prog metal band. If you're like, or maybe like Dream Theater too, but like Dream Theater is more like rock, maybe metal, but like Meshuggah is like, their earlier stuff is like so far ahead of its time, it's insane. And I would say Mastodon. Mastodon's another sleeper pick, I think. Mastodon's an older band.
If you like riffs,
oh yeah,
Mastodon is the band, dude. They write such cool guitar parts.
Yeah, Mastodon's a great band. Going back a little further, obviously Metallica. You gotta throw Metallica in there. They're one of the how do I get into metal?
OGs.
Yeah, they're OGs for sure. There's bands like Slayer. Slayer's more of like your.
So they're the precursor to what became Slipknot. They're the thrash OGs, and like they made it super popular. And then basically what Slipknot did is we're gonna modernize Slayer.
Yeah,
and
that makes a lot of sense.
Add some rap vocals to it.
And I mean, there are bands like there's bands like Anthrax, which I never really listened to. They're more of like an upbeat thrash metal. And then like I don't know much about them, but there's I mean, Iron Maiden's a great one. Megadeth is a great one.
Those are all just like the classics of like metal.
And then
now you're getting into like more classic metal.
Yeah, choices. That's more of like your your classics. So that would be some of my picks for like your more classic. And then like Disturbed is another great one. Like Disturbed, like some people don't like Disturbed, but like they have really catchy riffs. Like Indestructible. I'm thinking of like 10,000 Fists.
10,000 Fists is so good.
What's that? I can't think of the name of it. It's on the tip of my tongue. I'm like, it's blanking for the name of that song. But Disturbed has some amazing songs, and again, 3 Days Grace is a great one to get into. They're a little punchier. So yeah, those are my classic act picks.
No, I agree with all those. Those are all really good classic choices. If you look more classic rock and you're trying to get into metal, I would lean towards those choices because they're going to be a little easier of a transition for you than the newer stuff. But if you like pop music and you like a lot of the newer stuff, I would take a lot of what I recommended into account for all that kind of stuff. Brooks, I think this is a good place to call it for the day.
I do too.
Listeners,
Andrew's got a scoot. But
thank you so much for listening. And if you have a favorite metal group or a good entry level list that you want to share with people, drop it in the comments of this video. If you're watching after the fact, thanks so much for checking it out. Like, share, subscribe. If you're listening on an audio platform, leave a review. If you're listening on Spotify, there should be a place for you to actually leave some of your favorite entry-level metal things, and we'll share those on Instagram as well. But yeah, Brooks, listeners, thank you so much for hanging out. And
it's been
about
fun.
Stuff we like.
I love heavy music. Don't forget to be nice, be good, respect the pit, and bang your heads. There you go.